Okay, so we all know each other if you're watching this video. I hope you can make it another time to get to know people. Uh, Today is the first one for English 529 in the 22 TW4 term. I don't even understand how they do these numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's the term we're in. And today we're going to talk about what's coming up in Module 2, which has a big focus on plot. And the thing that's really important is that this is when you're going to turn in your 3 story ideas. Please turn them in one Word document. Somebody asked that question, and I appreciate that the question got asked. It's easier for us to only have to click open things. And when you get done turning in these story ideas, you're going to turn them into the Module 3 critical peer review discussion board space. And right? I don't know if, is that true? Okay. I know for sure all the other milestones you do. Yeah, you do, because everybody's going to tell you which story idea they think you should choose. Thank you. My goodness, I'm losing my mind. And so when you do that, it's really important that you cut and paste the content of your milestone every time in this class and put it in the body of your discussion board space. And that's because just additional clicks reduce the chances that anybody's going to open or look at your stuff. And I want you to get as much feedback as possible. And so be sure that you cut and paste the content of it and throw it into the discussion board. What would I call that? Post space? Yeah, you all know what I mean. Okay.
Now, do we wait when we submit the 3 stories? Should we wait for your feedback before we put it into Module 3, or just put it in right away?
Put it in right away, because it'll actually be late if you wait for my feedback.
Okay.
It's due basically when Module 3 opens. Everybody's Module 2 work should be sitting in there waiting for you all to look at and comment. And so you just take my ideas in concert with everybody else's. I mean, yes, I have a lot of experience, but you know, everybody is a reader, and everybody is a good source of feedback for you. So, you know, mine doesn't necessarily take priority over somebody else's. I've had some people give some amazing feedback that I wish I had given. So just, you know, have an open mind to what people might suggest for you. And also, and you'll be talking about this in your very final project that you turn in for Module 10, you talk about the feedback process in this class. And so you will be assessing whether all the feedback's useful, and not all of it will be, right? And so you kind of learn how workshopping works, and to take what works for you and to be appreciative. I was just thinking about this yesterday, how anybody who spends any time reading any of your work has given you a gift of some sort. Even if you think their feedback isn't helpful to the way you're going to change your writing, think of them having actually spent their time thinking about your work and telling you what they think. It's amazing. And you're so lucky to have this opportunity in this class, because it happens, what, 4 times, I think? 2, 5, 7, 9? Not 9. So in 9, you all need to remind me to create a general discussion board post where I ask you to put in your final projects, because the course doesn't have you look at everybody's work in Module 10. And a ton of people are like, but how did they change it? And then last term, I forgot to make that discussion board, and people were frustrated because they didn't see everybody's final work. So there's a focus on plot in Module 2, and plot is important, right? I mean, that's what keeps us moving through a work, and that's what gives you the twist that Tammy's interested in. I personally don't think it's the most important element. If you have a really compelling character, they will hold you through a less compelling story, because we just really care about people. And I think this quote got put in the discussion board somewhere in each class, but Charters talks about it in Appendix 2, where the plot keeps you moving through the book, but the character is what you remember when you're done reading, basically. It's what sticks with you. And I find this to be true in my anecdotal experience for myself. And I think it holds true in all the reading I do on the outside as well.
Yeah, that's definitely like my whole thing. Like, I can read a book where the plot is kind of, it's okay. But like, if the characters are really, really good, then the characters will keep me involved in the plot. But even if the plot is like the most amazing plot I've ever heard of, and I really need to know like what is happening, if I can't get into the characters, I probably won't finish the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For me, the characters are the end all be all. Like,
so two important things with that. Take a look at the books that keep you reading for characters and try to figure out how the author is making those characters so compelling. And I'll tell you, I actually am a reader for fiction at the Rumpus. It's a literary magazine online. And when I'm reading, I will sometimes like kind of skim. I want to know what happens, but I don't care about the characters. And so those are pieces that I'll put a thumbs down to, because if I catch myself skimming ahead, then something hasn't worked, right? And
Yeah.
I think I'm a very like busy person. So I think it's helpful that I am, because it makes me cut to the chase with this stuff. And all of the readers for every literary magazine I know are busy. And so if you aren't hooking them, which is what we talked about this first go around, and then holding their interest, your piece isn't going to get picked, right? The other thing I want to say, because Sarah's heavy into poetry, is everything that we're studying in this fiction class, and this is a fiction class, does apply for things like screenwriting and poetry, because you still have to have compelling characters, you still have to have some narrative possibility. The sort of brushstrokes of fiction still appear in poetry. They appear for sure in narrative nonfiction, that's creative nonfiction, and absolutely in screenwriting as well. It's just expressed a little different. Okay, so that's what what I need to do is I need to pull you guys to the side and see if I covered everything, because I have a Word document that tells me that. Why aren't you guys up in the corner? Well, I'm just gonna look at this. Okay, so we looked at plot. Oh, and then just to talk about briefly, and I love that I forgot that the module has where Aristotle says we wouldn't learn anything about character except for having a plot, and that is true. Like, your character can't exist without a context to be in. But anyway, you do 3 different original short story scenes. And what SNHU means by original is, you could have had an idea or maybe done a little outlining or something, but if you've ever turned in prose that is this story, be sure that you have a 30% or lower Turnitin match to be sure that you're not repeating something from a different course. So, and honestly, this is a great opportunity just to write from scratch and develop something new and figure out your process from inception to the end, if you can. And if you were working on something before the term started, like in the week between classes or whatever, that's totally new. That's original stuff. You're in the process already. And then when you give us the 1 paragraph summary, I like it after the creative part, because I want to know if I can figure some stuff out when I'm reading it. But you won't be graded down for the order you offered, and I'm just telling you my preference. And then take a part of the story that's engaging. It's usually the beginning, because the hook should get us grabbed, and then it usually is like kind of introducing the character, and we get a sense of where you are. It's only 1 page, and so you just need to be sure that you've given us a really important part of the story, and you need 2 to 3 specific questions for the module 3 critical peer review. You don't have to show those questions to me. They're not part of your grading for that assignment. What I really do is focus on the graded elements of SNHU and the particular assignment. For just the module 2 work, you aren't graded on, I don't think point of view is the one that isn't in there, that's in there the rest of the time, but you will be graded on like narrative arc, and does your summary match up with the narrative arc that you say is happening? So does your scene and your summary match together? Character development, setting with description, setting with sensory detail will matter later, and rhetorical devices. So you'll want to be paying attention to all those things. You guys
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I've gotten 2 out of the 3 done. But when it talks about like it has to tie to your story arc that you write in your paragraph, but we're only doing like the very first part, it's not gonna show the climax falling and stuff. So
No, but your summary should tell it to me. So basically your summary, that short paragraph, it needs to have everything. You need to spoil all of it. Instead of it sounding like a teaser to get somebody to read the book, you need to be, and she dies in the end. I mean, if that's what happens, right? So give it away, like tell us what happens. And what I want to emphasize is, you know, I've gone to see Romeo and Juliet probably 5 times on the stage. And every time I go see it, I'm like, no, wake up. And I know what's going to happen. And yet they build the tension. They're good enough, right? So it's okay that people know what's going to happen in your story. And honestly, when you're writing, sometimes what's going to happen changes. You can have a plan in module 2 that's not what happens by module 7. That's okay too. That's just a normal part of writing. But us knowing that you're going to write a story that ends up like, say, you know, they get married, somebody dies, whatever, it's big important events. It's you getting us there with your good writing that'll be compelling. So don't worry about us knowing the spoilers.
So like the not the summary paragraph, but the where we might like put the hook in, that doesn't have to show the whole arc.
Not, it shouldn't
Okay,
show the
that's
whole
what
arc.
I was. Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Cool.
think you could possibly put it in there.
Yeah.
That's just going to get us started. But
Right.
then that's why the summary exists, so that we can be like, oh, I like that one because I can't believe she's almost going to die and then she doesn't, or whatever, you know. Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so any questions about what's coming up in module 2? A couple of main points just overarching for this class that tend to be little hot points or whatever. One, so everything you turn in this class should be that MLA format with the information block, the running header with your last name and page number. I attached that sample paper for you. Worst case scenario, you can just type over the top of that. It's already formatted, right? The other thing that really bothers people is the limit of 2,500 words. You can't write a story longer than that for this class. And I don't say, yes, go ahead and write anything longer, only because I can't begin to stress enough how much value there is in you having to fit something into a short space like that. Suddenly every word matters more. Every sentence matters. When you figure out what your story is about, everything serves that story. And so I don't allow for, I mean, like I allow 50, 75 words or so for like the information block and that kind of stuff. You know, I'm not totally cruel. But if you go to 2,600 words, I might take off some points because it's so important to be able to fit a model like this. It will improve your writing. I know I sound crazy, but I do know what I'm talking about. So be sure that you fit within that model. But also the minimum is 2,000 words. So if you're having trouble having enough words, the kind of work we're going to do today, this pressure writing, you can do it to yourself and it will help you develop words. There's so much more to say about your story. Every person should be having the problem of going over instead of going under. There's just so much writing to do. And then on the other assignments, so like not the creative writing, but the writing that is discussing what we're reading and that kind of work, I always, always, always ask you to bring in outside experts, to the point where people are like, you know, my course critiques, which I take very seriously, students will complain. Like, she took points off because I didn't have an outside expert. Well, yeah. And the reason is that in the professional writing world, you are going to be reading other people, seeing what they say about craft. If you aren't consistently keeping yourself up to date in that world, then you're outside of a very important conversation. And one of the things you'll notice in this first discussion board is some people might pick, I'm trying to think, somebody picked a book from like the 1500s. What would be that book? Anyway, lots of books.
Oh, sorry. I'm in a medieval lit course right now as well. Was it Chaucer or?
It wasn't, but you're on track. Maybe, and it wasn't Pilgrim's Progress. Anyway, or they pick Poe or Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine to pick those people. But what was like the writing world 200 years ago is different than the writing world now, and you're trying to emerge into the conversation that's happening now. And so, yeah, it's really important for you to be up to date with outside sources. And if you want to talk to somebody about, say, I really think you could do more sensory detail, well, that's nice as your personal opinion, but if you can bring in the weight of an outside expert saying this is what sensory detail does for a piece of work, or if you're saying, hey, this point of view is jarring, or like you're head hopping or something, go out and find the information in the world about head hopping, and then it just reinforces what you're seeing by saying, I'm not the only person who thinks this is important in creative writing. And then it takes some of the weight off of you supposedly pointing a finger at someone. Instead, you're saying, you know, as I've read, this is how creative writing seems to work. And so I just want to encourage you to think of this, right? So it's just my way of saying, I just realized I don't really do it much with you, but I mean, I have 41 students. And so when I'm giving you feedback, you know, like if I only had to give feedback to 2 people, I'd be amazing because I would have all the time in the world. And then finally, last thing, and this is for people listening to the recording as well as the people here. Right now, for your creative assignments, what I do is a recording, a voice recording where I'm reading your work. I read it, I think through it, I think what I'm going to talk about, and then I do a recording while I'm looking at your work again to talk about what I'm seeing and try to get through things. If that method doesn't work for you, I absolutely will give you written feedback, whatever it is you want. Right now, it's just a voice recording because I usually don't have combed hair. And if that's not a learning style that works for you, be sure you let me know, because I absolutely can do whatever works for you, but I can give you like probably 3 times as much feedback doing it orally as I do writing normally. But also, if, you know, say only 4 people want written feedback, I definitely will give those people as much feedback. But if I had to give all 41 people written feedback, I just wouldn't be able to give as much, because it takes time. And the recordings tend to be 5-ish minutes, sometimes 7 minutes. And SNHU means that you have like a, you know how you have online access to Word through SNHU, you know, like you can do web Word. In web Word, you can go into the dictate function and it'll transcribe. So you can drop my recording into the dictate function and have it transcribed into words anyway. And which is what I do if like somebody shows up and say, this doesn't work for me. Well, I pop it into that Word that SNHU makes available online, and just give you the recording and say, I'm so sorry, because boy, it's not very written articulate. I speak very differently than I write. Anyway, just let me know. It's absolutely fine. But I find that there's just so much more I can do, and I can be, you know, you hear my enthusiasm because I'm just amazed every term by how creative everybody is. So you'll hear my enthusiasm about your work. You'll hear, you know, the ideas that I have for you. But if you need it written, you can read my enthusiasm. It just doesn't have the same, oh my gosh. It's just what I do when I read your work. Whew. Questions, comments? Are you worried about how crazy your teacher is this term?
I think we're about the same kind of crazy, so you know.
Well, that's good news, definitely. Okay, so we're going to move into the writing part of this. One thing I will suggest, you don't have to do this, but in the writing, if you write by hand during this, I know you won't get as much down, but there are literal studies that show writing by hand engages both sides of your brain and changes the creativity of what emerges on the page. So, and you don't have to do it this time. And I will tell you that I do most of my writing on a keyboard. But when I'm really stuck, I will write by hand and I'll put a timer on. And when you're doing this timed writing for yourself, Grub Street in Boston is a like writing community that has paid classes and stuff. They call this Jumpstart Writing. So I'm doing something that I've seen in another source that's not my own invention, but it's so useful. And so if you do this pressured timed writing, and anytime you're stuck, what you write on the page or type or whatever is, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. Your brain will get so mad at you, you will instantly come up with something to write, because most brains don't want that repetition. They will like work their way around being given that board writing, you know, you're up at the chalkboard writing chalk. So do that if you get stuck. And then if you're stuck in your larger writing, you can do this process on your own. Basically, you'll want to start with something like either a question you can ask yourself about your plot or your character or something like that. So it's a question, an action, just have your character take an action, or like camera action. I can't remember what camera is. I think you snapshot a scene and get moving in the scene. So you like see your character in scene and just start writing about what. If I'm wrong about that, I will reach out to you. So what I do now is I have some prompts. I have like 7, but we only have time for 2 inserted here. And I will talk to you about them a little bit to let your brain start warming up. And then I'll throw it in the chat so you have a place to look at the prompt. And then I'll just basically say on your marks, get set, right? And I will set my timer for 6 minutes and you will have 6 minutes to write. And then when I say it's time to wrap things up, I'll tell you when you have a minute left. And so at the minute left, you need to be thinking about a way to kind of resolve what you have going on. Because I want you to really try hard to stop at 6 minutes. And 1, we all know that you shouldn't have something complete, or if you do, bravo. But I mean, it's just not expected. We all know you all only have 6 minutes. And so don't, feel too worried about sharing what you have with the group because you're all under the same pressure. And it's amazing to find out what happens in people's heads. So we'll get done and then we'll just ask people to share what they have and we might make a comment or 2 about what we read. But because there's so many of us and we've gone so long already, we'll keep it pretty brief this time so we get comfortable with the process. And then in 2 more weeks, we'll just do it again. How you feeling? Okay. So for this first one, so you can write about your character or whatever, but say you don't have, my mother knows that I'm teaching you people right now. Why is she calling me? Anyway, and if you want to turn off your camera to write or whatever, that's all fine too. You can write about your personal experience. I put all these prompts in terms of your character just because I want you to be able to push this to stuff that's useful for class. But if you don't end up writing about your character, say you write nonfiction, it's all fine. All that matters is writing. If you don't follow the prompt, fine. All that matters is writing. So I think I'm going to go down here to this one. I think this one just provokes so many cool things. So write about a lie your character told. Was it a good lie? Like being nice to somebody, like a little white lie, or a bad lie? How did they feel when they told it? And how do they feel now after having told it? Was there a reason to lie? And was that reason good enough? I'm sorry. I just love this one because my characters don't tend to lie, but then you find out that they do because we all do a little bit, just to be nice or whatever, right? And so I'm going to put it, I've got it in the chat. I've got the timer. You ready? On your marks, it's set, right. You have just about a minute left. All right, that's it. Do your best to wrap things right up. All right, and you'll find that I probably muted you while you were working because I just make sure that it tries to stay quiet for everybody. So you might want to check if you're planning to talk, if I've muted you or not. It's not my top skill, but there you go. So how did it go? Like, what was the process like for you to get pushed into this fast writing like this?
I couldn't go back and edit much.
Good.
Which is good.
That's the point. Very good. What else?
Yeah, I just wrote what came to mind and just went with it.
And it's surprising, right? Like your mind just takes off. I did
Mhm.
this one time and a great gate of Omagia showed up. I bet you've never heard of it because I never had. Anyone else? Thoughts?
It definitely showed that like the genre that I tend to write in.
Excellent. Yeah,
Because-
like what came out was natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I know, right? You're like, I've got to catch him.
Well, he has like this like little toy that he likes. He like puts carrots through the holes. They're like these little carrots. And he will bring it over to me so that I can open it, take the carrots out. So I didn't get the full 6 minutes because I was
That's
like,
all right.
I did this like 3 times.
Yeah, fair enough. We understand. Well, I mean, I say I understand. I haven't had kids myself, but I understand. I can be sympathetic, just not empathetic. Anybody else want to add anything before we hear what you wrote?
Just my hands couldn't keep up with the thoughts that were
That's
coming.
fantastic.
I tend to be a fairly quick writer, but not quick enough.
That's fantastic. That's really great. And just remember, I mean, so I was doing some work for the book development program and I was stuck and I did this to myself and I'm blown away by how well it works. So, you know, if you only have 10 minutes to write, do this and you'll be done in 6. All right. Does anybody want to share what you got? Sarah, okay, we'll start with you.
Just read it.
Yeah, just read it.
Okay.
This is also great practice because as you become successful in writing, you'll be expected to read your work.
Okay. I told you already, I didn't take the stupid feather. Susie rolled her eyes at her sister walking away quickly. Allison had taken that feather. She knew it. I don't know. Oh, and then I said, I don't know. Allison hid a smile as Susie walked away. Now I have at least a few hours to figure out how this thing gives her so much power. She felt the crystallized feather carefully running her fingers over the brittle barbs. Why does the artifact or the feather attach to her and not to me? We're twins. We have the same DNA. Suddenly she winced. A drop of blood formed on the tip of her finger. She watched as it slowly moved over the subtle ridges of her fingerprint. When the drop of blood fell to the cobblestone floor, it sizzled and a dark swirl of smoke rose. Oh my God. Now I know the power that and Now I know the power, and her hidden smile shifted to a devious grin.
Nice. All right, everybody, what did you notice? What stood out for you in what Sarah wrote? When did it gain its like momentum or really capture your attention?
For me, when we figured out that the feather was magical, because I obviously lean towards the fantasy, so
Yeah.
For me, it was really when the sibling relationship started and you got to see that sort of back and forth. Because I know personally, when I was a kid, I absolutely stole things from my brother's room, and he stole things from me and then said, "Oh no, we have no idea where that went."
Right. Who did we think was speaking in the beginning? Whose point of view were we in? I thought it
Are
was
you asking
Sarah.
me? Okay.
Sorry. No. I was just asking what people thought. I thought it was Sarah at first because Sarah asked the question and that was the first words we heard. Now it could have been experience from Allison watching Sarah ask that question, but I definitely thought we were in Sarah's point of view and then boom, we were in Allison's. So this is her story. And you might, I only talk about revision. Of course, when you have 6 minutes, it's going to start where it starts. This is no criticism. But you might consider if you were revising it, how do you make sure that we know this is Allison's point of view when you're going through. But I was just enamored with brittle barbs. There was lovely alliteration and made me picture that feather. And when the blood pulled into her fingerprints, like I could just see it doing that maze thing. That was a really cute, cool piece of figurative language. So, that kind of stuff to me is magic. That's where the magic of writing comes in. So nicely done. Very polite.
Thank you.
All right. I normally would let everybody talk, but we have a lot of us and I want to do one more round and I don't want to keep you too long. So Tammy, are you raising your hand to go?
Yeah, if you're going to do another one.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Read.
I'm curious to see what everybody thinks of this because it's one of my ideas that I wasn't sure if I want to use.
Great. And no, I should say that we don't get to do any like this isn't very good or anything that you didn't do, Tammy. But none of that here. We can do something like that and then go into the story.
Okay. How could I ever forgive myself? Shards of the bombed building floated around me. Screams of the innocents burned not only my ears, but my soul. Why did I exist if this existence only destroyed? The stench of iron from so much blood mixed with burnt flesh and my own vomit. He said I had to, or my mom would die. But was anyone's life worth this? I stood to my full 5 feet 1 inches and traversed the rubble while sirens and screams blistered the air. My feet carried me to the meeting place where he was waiting. One lie to get her into that cafe. Just one lie, and so many lives changed and lost.
Oh. All right, wow. Everybody, what do you think?
I thought that the imagery was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was horrifying, but in a good way, if that makes sense.
Good writing.
It made me feel like I was reading or hearing a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else?
I really like the word choice, like the blistering in the air. It was really unique.
Definitely.
Also, I want to know what else is happening. Like, how did you get there? Why did you have to make that choice? Who's making you make that choice? Give me more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? I would add, I loved that the subtlety with which you characterize the 5 foot 1 inch character, right? And that also tells us how diminutive this person is. And then that idea that the feet carried the person to meet the other person, like, whoever this character is doesn't want to do any of this. Why do I exist if my existence means destroying things, right? But so like there's this sense of not, being responsible, but also having it happen outside of like the heart and soul of the person it's happening to. And you captured that in 6 minutes of writing, so nicely done. Definitely seems like a
Thank
good
you.
story idea. I hope you're moving forward with that one for the class.
Good. I think I will. I had like 7 different ones I wasn't sure. And I thought, well, I'll try it and see.
Yeah, nice.
And Betsy, I'm curious to see what happens too.
Isn't that the best feeling? Like, I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, because you don't know for sure what choices this character is going to make, right?
Yep.
That's what actually the next prompt's going to deal with a little bit. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Who wants to read next? And I will ask everybody to read unless you absolutely don't want to. And Kat, if you like, if you're ever putting your hand up, you could always use the raise hand function since we can't see you. But Kai has their hand up, so.
All right. So Shenandoah cannot lie. No Fae can. But she has come so incredibly close so many times, twisting the truth almost to the breaking point. The first time she was 4 and told her mother that she had eaten all of the terrible mushy carrots her mother had slopped on her plate. My plate's clean, she called. Did you eat all of it? Her mother asked with a raised eyebrow. Some fell, but Moon took care of it. The words seemed to tumble out of her mouth unbidden. Did you make the food fall on purpose? She blanched when the word yes was already on her tongue. Her mother gave a satisfied smile and put more of the veggies on her plate. Eat up, Shen. It's good for you. And Shenandoah did, wondering why in the world she confessed so easily. It would be 5 years until she discovered the true nature of who she was, and 3 more before she knew that her mother knew the entire time.
Wow. That's great. Thoughts from people.
I love how it started out kind of mundane, eating your veggies and you're getting your children to eat your veggies and very descriptive. But then all of a sudden that 5 years and 3 years came in and I'm like, well, who is she? Is she the Jolly Green Giant? Is she, how does that tie in with this? And that became very interesting.
Thank you.
More thoughts.
I like how we're all kind of writing hooks, basically.
Yep,
So
definitely.
that's fun.
Which I'm anticipating is going to happen in your assignment next week, where we'll have 3 sort of hook page, like maybe a paragraph with a hook and some development and start getting into the story a little bit. More thoughts about Kai's Shenandoah piece?
I would say since it was short, I appreciate being told at the beginning that she's a Fae, because then it kind of sets the mood a little bit and a little bit of the expectation. And so like outside of that, I wouldn't have known it was a mystical thing. And so I'm curious to see like how that mysticality, I don't know, grows should the story grow.
Thank you.
Mysticism, I think.
Yes.
I just went through all the words trying to figure it out.
I
Thank you.
also like that you get to see that little bit of the relationship between the mother and the daughter, where like the mother is obviously taking advantage of something she knows is happening with her daughter and not telling the daughter that she knows that it's there. And then it sounds like the daughter's then like, well, I'm not going to tell mom that I have this thing that her mother always knew was there. So there's that really cool family dynamic there too, that you're setting up, that I would love to see how they find out. Like, how does she find out that her mother knows, and how does she try to hide it from her mother? That's very interesting too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, is it nefarious? It doesn't seem like it. I think it's more, it seems sort of more humor, like the mother knows that Shenandoah can't lie and plays with that boundary with their inability to lie. And all along the mother is going, I know you're going to tell me the truth, which is fun, but it could be used, in a bad way. And how many moms like do this anyway, right? The mom is the one with the power. And I loved, it was not cliche to see how many truths did she twist to the breaking point. That might be cliche used in another way, but with the buildup you had in that sentence, I thought it was really lovely the way you took us to that, because we understand, because she's Faye, Faye, right? Anyway, that we understand that that breaking point really is a tangible thing instead of a cliche, right?
Thank you.
Nice.
And
Any
just
other
from a
thoughts?
reader's perspective, I don't really know much about fantasy. So when you said a fae, I just kind of thought that was her name. I didn't realize that was a mystical thing.
Okay.
So it was different for me, because when Sarah mentioned about it being a fae, I was like, oh, what's that? So, but for your audience, you're writing for people who read mystical,
Yeah.
so it would make sense to them.
And you certainly, you know, when you drop this into the discussion board space for the critical peer review in module 3, you can set that up. I mean, or your someone can set it up. It's not, I mean, good point when we're hearing it out loud and we don't know what genre we're hearing. Definitely. Nicely done. Thank you, Kai. All right.
Thank you.
So who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I have to put my son down for a nap, so.
Oh, yeah. So go quick.
Mine is not nearly as long as everybody else.
That's fair.
But I said, there was never a better time to come clean than now. Rayla shuffled from foot to foot, her toes scraping through the dirt as she looked down at them. She knew that she shouldn't have lied in the first place, but it needed to be done. The news would be devastating once revealed, and she wasn't quite sure how to put it into words. They were in the thick of war, and everyone needed to keep their heads. She hadn't received word that help would be coming, and her troops were flagging, their hope fading. So she had rallied them and told them that help was on the way. She couldn't tell them that they were it, that they were the last defense, that this was the end, and that they probably wouldn't make it through the night.
Ooh. I'm hooked. Thoughts, people?
I really like the sensory detail of like her toes dragging in the dirt. I really loved the imagery and the real like feel of it.
Kind of along
I
the
love
same
that
lines. Sorry.
No, go right ahead, Kat.
Yeah, just the action of her moving her feet like that. Like, to me, I was thinking that she did well with the show, don't tell kind of situation.
Agreed. Good observation.
Yeah. I love that it was a she in charge of her troops. That tells me a little bit about time period as well.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that I really liked was how the sort of ambiguity of the lie, whether it's, you know, meant as a, hey, we're going to keep morale to try and push through this, or a, you guys need to have some hope before your inevitable death, you know?
Yeah, was it a good lie? And that's still in question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
And
don't
that
know
kind
if
of
they made it through the
ambiguity is
night.
great. Yeah. Betsy, were you adding something? I think I interrupted you. Okay. And I did want to add that, like, I love that her troops were flagging, and from a military point of view, that's such a great double entendre word where, you know, troops represent a flag. They usually represent a country, but they're flagging in the action of growing tired. And so I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it came through really nicely. And I'm so impressed. Like, you reset up the toy 3 times, your child needs to go down for a nap, and you managed to do that. You're gonna do it. You can do this. So that was really great. So we still have Crystal and Kat and Betsy. You haven't read yet either, have you? Okay, so we have those 3 people left. Would somebody like to go? And Kirsten, if you have to go, we understand. Yeah.
Yeah, head out. He usually goes down like 4 hours after he woke up. So
yeah, gotcha.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
See you.
I can go next.
Thanks, Kat.
I do feel like my prompt or my bit of story almost feels like more of a setup, like to something larger. So not as like fantastical as some of you guys's. All right, so when the cops showed up to the house, they asked so many questions about if there was anyone that could have had a grudge against us, if any new workers have been in the house, or if there has been any suspicious behavior like slow drivers canvassing the houses. Of course, my parents couldn't recall noticing any of these kinds of things. Why would they when I knew it was me that stole the jewelry? It's not like I wanted to do it, but I lied and said I didn't know anything about it. It all started when I found out the kid that got bullied at school was poor. I must admit, I picked on him a bit myself, but I thought it was just because he was lazy and dirty and didn't care about cleaning himself up. But then I started noticing little things, like he has never ate lunch. His clothes were always the same few outfits, and even when it was obvious they no longer fit right, he still wore them no matter how uncomfortable they must have become. Then one day I seen him while I was out riding my bike entering a very rundown shack of a house. That's when I made the decision to pawn my mother's jewelry so that maybe I could help him get a new set of clothes and help him get some school meals. I don't regret doing it. He needed it more than my mother did anyways.
That's awesome. Thoughts from the peanut gallery.
I'd love that as you map that out and finish it off. I would love to read that to my granddaughter. That has such a moral compass story. It's just, I love that.
Mm-hmm. And like, I also felt like it was very relatable because like, so when I was in like elementary school, middle school, I was, so my mom always gave me like extra money for field trips or whatever, specifically because she knew a lot of my friends wouldn't be able to get lunch or things like that. And I actually got in trouble a few times because of that, because, you know, I would just do that. And I didn't understand why, you know, asking for, you know, all of this was actually causing a bit of harm as well, on my mom's side, because sometimes things were a bit tight. So I thought that the reasoning behind it was really interesting, and that specifically the like being quiet when the cops were asking questions was really interesting as well, because I can see how all of that would just spiral and spiral and spiral. And I think it's just really interesting where this can go.
More thoughts? Yeah, so this was not a plot heavy necessarily piece of writing, but definitely character heavy in all the best ways. And one of the things I liked a lot about it is that this is a younger character with, as Tammy said, a strong moral compass, and the idea that the character would just take care of it themselves. Like, you know, nothing to do with, I'll ask my parents for help, or, you know, this person is like, nope, I'm just going to resolve this. And I think for especially, so that would kind of mark this as a young adult or a middle grade kind of story at this point. And in those kinds of stories, that's exactly, you know, the plucky resolve things character who realizes they used to bully the same person, and then has the right character when they see the person's background. Like some people would see that as more power. Some people would say, I can bully harder because this kid can't do anything about it. So just such a likable person that we want to know more, and we want to know how this resolves, because, you know, this person stole for all the best reasons, we think, but it'd be really interesting to have some kind of twist in there about why, like maybe they were, you know, the jewels were handed down to the mother from a beloved great grandmother or something like that. I mean, there could be some complications in that story that really make you think through, like, how does a person at that age, they did the right thing and maybe the wrong results came of it or something. You know, how do you keep building the tension and make it really boil until you resolve it? What conflict explodes, right? Maybe the police aren't the only step in it. I don't know, but can't wait to find out if you use it.
Mhm.
Maybe not. This is the hardest thing about these classes is, you know, I witness, at least this one, we finished a class. In 510, it's like people start a story and I'm like, I want to know what happens. So at
Mhm.
least this one has to be a complete narrative. Thank you. All right, so we still have Betsy and Crystal. And if you don't want to go, you don't have to. I just would love for you to go.
I can read what I wrote.
Okay, thanks, Betsy.
Shelley stared at Jonathan, unsure what to say now. He wasn't confronting her, although at the moment to her it felt that way. Instead, his manner was open and honest. He watched her for a moment, and then because she had not answered and completely unaware of her inner turmoil, he asked again, "How do you know Matthew?" "Well," Shelley began, her tongue heavy in her mouth and her hands hugging her sides as she crossed her arms across her chest. "Well, do you remember when we went to the party at Jessica's in March, or when I went to the party at Jessica's in March without you? I met him at the party. There, that wasn't a lie, was it?" She looked into his eyes and waited for his response.
What happens? Thoughts?
Drama.
I kind of love that we don't know what the actual lie is, you know? Like there's something there. We know it's about meeting another person, how they met, and involves a party, but we don't actually know any of the context going forward. So like if this is the start, it's very much a dropping in the middle, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely in medias res, right? Like we do not know. And I love that we know that we're in her point of view, but she's just sweating out and we don't even know what's been asked, right? And then when it's like, how do you know Matthew? And we're like, this just, if she's this worried, this is not going to go well. And it could be anything like Kaya's saying, right? I mean, it could be that, you know, she, I don't know, like bought weed from him or something. I don't know, right? It doesn't have to be that they had some sort of illicit relationship, but that's what we're thinking because we've been trained for that stereotype. I super liked the figurative language you were using, like her tongue was heavy in her mouth, you know, and then and her hands right her side. Like it's very physical. We have these sensations, but also when you have that heavy tongue, it can do metaphorical work. So it's definitely sensory detail and it's pushing towards figurative language, all of which is hard to accomplish in 6 minutes and was really fun to think about. All right. And Crystal, do you want to go? Okay. You don't have to. I mean, though I do want to encourage you, please come back and try again, or maybe read your next one. Because it's, even though I will say this, we have, there's a person that I know from previous classes that was just like deathly afraid to read and she made herself do it. And she ended up like getting accepted into the MFA program. She's doing like, so you know what I mean? Like you just keep pushing your fears. And when you feel comfortable enough to push it, then read for us. But also we know you have people around, so maybe you just don't want to read in front of them. Gotcha. Okay, so this was exciting. This is such a great start. I'm really excited about your writing. And so I feel like this next one is a little vague. And I think what I'll do is I'll throw a second prompt in the chat if you find the first one isn't working for you. But this first one, based on what you've been writing so far, you could either keep going with the same character or maybe think through another story that you're writing about. But this next prompt is very simple. You would begin with if, and you just put your character's name or she or he or they, right? If your character had only known that, and then just ellipses because you get writing. But somewhere in there, you're going to use the words, so therefore, right? So whatever they had known causes something else. So I will put that in the chat. Hold on, I'm going to copy that and put it in there. And then just in case this one's too vague for you, You could also choose probably this one. So we all know what a phobia means. It can be a common fear like heights, the dark, bugs, but it can be specific to a person and an experience. So pick an everyday object like a penny, a sock, a toothbrush, a pen, and create a situation that explains the fear your character feels for this everyday object. So how about either one of these prompts, depending on what's speaking? I see Betsy's grinning about it already. Okay, so there's your choice of prompts. I am setting up the clock on your marks. Get set, right. You have a minute left. Okay, try to wrap things up. Time's up. I was just talking way muted. This is only like my 9 millionth one of these and I can't get it straight. Okay. So look, most of you are looking pretty wrapped up. Usually we try to go in a different order the second time just to shake things up. Is anybody interested in reading what you got? Or do you want to talk about like, was the process any, let's do this first. Was the process any different the second time because you kind of knew what was coming? So it was for Sarah.
It was harder.
Okay. Harder, interesting. Me too.
I felt like it was easier just because the first one I felt like I had to draw on some kind of past experience just to get a quick idea. And now that I've kind of gotten into that mindset, I was able to just throw out something entirely fictional this time.
Ah, very nice. Good. I'm glad that worked.
Yeah, I actually had a hard time deciding between the prompts, which ate up some of my time.
Yeah, it's why I usually don't do that. But I felt like the first one was so vague. I should trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
Though, how many of you wrote on the first one?
I did.
And the other 4 of you wrote on the second one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So see, my second guessing wasn't entirely bad. All right. Well, here it is. And I hope that the process will work for you if you find yourself getting stuck when you're writing for this class, or like if you're doing anything like morning pages, or if you're just trying to have a daily writing practice. This is such a great way to get yourself writing, and especially that technique of I don't know what to write. Sarah can now vouch for it. It works, doesn't it? Awesome. Okay, who would like to go first except Sarah, who was our brave person last time? Kai, hand up already.
Yeah, I've got to go in about 15 minutes to get ready for another Zoom call, so I figured I would just go ahead.
Great. Yeah, we ran late and I'm sorry for that. I'll try to hold things together.
Good.
I just love that we had so many people.
Yeah, me too. So here's my thing. Charlotte hated the color white. She knew that in some cultures it was the color of death. So she used that excuse while showing off her knowledge of the far quarters of the earth, her connections, and the knowledge gained from ballroom chats and childhood lessons. But in truth, she hated white, was nearly afraid of the color, though she would never admit it, because it was the color of wedding dresses and baptismal baby gowns. It was the color that would eventually and inevitably take her dear Edith away from her and into a dull life of drudgery at the whims of a man she could not possibly love. The only man that seemed interested in her lived many long hours away. He was barbaric to his staff, and it seemed likely he would be the same to his future wife. Charlotte had no hope of being guest there long or spending much time alone after the wedding bells had rung.
Oh. Okay, thoughts from all of you?
I love the twist for me, because for me, white's always pure and angelic. And so it starts right away with this twist of, oh no, white is bad. So I'm waiting to see where that goes.
Right, unexpected. So many questions. What else?
I also like the you know, it reminds me of weddings and christening dresses, which most people, well, which a lot of people would think of as, oh, this is my inevitable future and I'm looking forward to it and it's excitement. And in this person's head, they're like, these are the most horrible things I can think of. I don't want any of these things in my life. And I think that's a real twist as well, is taking these things that, you know, especially for women are considered like what you're expected to do, and saying, I want nothing to do with this and this is why. I think that's beautiful and very well conveyed.
Thanks.
Definitely. In fact, so in the discussion boards, you'll find, and I know I did this in both classes, I talked about contingent reality, which is we can all be here in this moment together and listening to Kai's piece, but we're bringing our personal experiences to bear on the experience. So all reality is contingent on our own experiences, which means we can never have the exact same experience as somebody else, right? And so here, you know, Kai's playing with that idea because she's saying most people would think this, right? Or at least that's what we say culturally. And she turns it on its head and we're like, I want to know more. And then I'm like, I want to know, you know, it like, is this a certain time period, you know, where marriage is an absolute expectation, you know, but then the boss is barbaric. And so are these women working and does that impact it? Like I'm asking all these questions. What is this setting? And if she's going to be a few hours away, like, you know, is it by horse or by plane or by, you know, and there's just so many questions being asked here, or like setting us up. It's just like the hooks that we were talking about for this module 1. It was a really good start. Exciting.
Thank you.
Okay, well, shoot, now people are writing about different things and I only get to find out how one story ends, but all right. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. Mine for this prompt went pretty
Crystal!
silly.
Oh no, Crystal
Oh,
put her
Crystal
hand
can
up.
go.
We're going.
Okay, so Julia walks up to the counter to get the next person in line. She thinks to herself, oh great, not him again. Sean, it's your turn, she calls to him from the desk. He slowly walks up to her and follows her to the chair. Sean's mother is hovering nearby, waiting for the screams. Julia picks up the cape and drapes it around his neck. She also grabs the second cape and drapes it backwards so that Sean is completely covered. How are you doing today, Sean? Are we doing the same haircut? 2 on the sides and a 4 on top? Sean replies, yes, please. Everything goes well with the haircut until Julia forgets one important thing. Grabbing the hairdryer to get all the loose hairs from Sean's head. As soon as Sean sees the hairdryer, he bolts out of the chair, throwing the capes off and runs to the bathroom. Julia apologizes to his mom profusely. I am so sorry, I forgot. Sean's mother pays for the haircut and then takes 20 minutes convincing him to come out of the bathroom.
Oh, that is almost a flash. That's great. Okay, thoughts from all of you.
For me, it went, whoops, sorry.
No, you go.
For me, it went back to when my granddaughter was little. She was scared to death of the hand dryers. So I immediately put my own life into what you were reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I thought that it was really relatable. I know that there are a lot of kids who are like afraid of the noise of the hairdryer, and I really love this sort of routine that they've set up there that the hairdresser knew about it before. They've gone through this before, but they just forgot this one time, you know? It really sets up like a world building outside of just that one scene.
More thoughts?
I was one of those kids who was super, super sensitive to sounds, like when I was young. So I relate to that child completely. I'm like, yeah, I know this. Yeah, I know
And
him.
who is our main character in this story? Like, who's our narrative point of view?
I thought the hairdresser.
Yeah.
The
And so what's
hairdresser.
extra cool is that we're all feeling like these warm thoughts for this. Oh my God, I just forgot the technical term. Side character, not main character. Help me. Anyway, what's really neat is that we see both the sort of dread on the hairdresser's part because this is a difficult haircut, and then we see her absolute care. I think it was a her, right? Yeah, and then we see that she makes a mistake, and it's a simple mistake, and she feels awful about it. So all of it makes her a character that we can sympathize with, and that we want to be on her side because she's a human, but she's doing her best. And those are things that are just wonderful. Yeah, so great job with characterization. And this story is almost complete as it is. So, if you read around about flash fiction, I mean, as far as like, it's got a complete narrative arc in it. And so, look at the ways that you can tighten up, polish it, surprise us a little bit, and then look for flash fiction outlets. It might have a chance, right? Good job. Thank you for reading. Which I think it means we're on to Betsy next because she was going to read. Does that work for you?
That's fine.
Fantastic.
Like I said, mine went a little silly. So
That's great.
here's what I have.
Silly.
Greg was afraid. This is what is known about him. He had a fear of flying, a fear of heights, a fear of the dark. There was little that he wasn't afraid of. Greg understood fear and the fact that it wasn't always rational. But even Greg had a hard time understanding Molly's fear of mugs. She could drink from a glass with no problem, even a jar, but for some reason a coffee mug was her Achilles heel. He tried to understand her explanation of pouring a hot mug of coffee on herself as a child as the basis, but he reasoned, shouldn't she really be afraid of coffee? The mug was the conveyance, not the source of her fears. And that's as far as I got.
Fun. Okay, thoughts.
The story was a lot of fun to listen to, and as a side note, I think you should be like a narrator.
Thank you.
Like read books on tape, or not tape, but like whatever.
But I had the same
that is a
thought.
fun
She sounded like a very audiobook kind of voice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I really liked the comparing fears because the one person seems like almost agoraphobic with so many different phobias, and then it's, well, because this one particular fear is outside the usual, he's just like, well, this is ridiculous. When he has all of these other fears that are just more conventional.
I totally 100% relate to your character that's afraid of mugs. I'm not afraid of mugs, but I could sit in a cage with a tiger, but do not bring a worm near me. So I totally understand the whole rationale. And it was just so cool for me to hear that somebody else was so silly.
I have friends who have I have several friends, separate friends who are afraid of frogs, deathly afraid of frogs.
Huh.
Can't be anywhere near a frog because both of them tried to pick up a rock when they were little and it jumped at their face.
Mhm.
Fun fact, oh, sorry, you had.
No, but so it's that kind of thinking that I was like, what is the thing? There's no rationality to a fear. So it doesn't have to be rational why she's afraid of it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, I was deathly afraid of geese when I was little because one time I tried to run up to a goose to pet it because, you know, I was a very dumb toddler, as you know, all toddlers are supposed to be. And it just bit me.
Yeah.
And I was like terrified for years of any goose I ever saw.
I don't know about the rest of you, but that's a pretty legitimate fear, actually.
So geese are mean.
They
My
are.
husband got rushed by a goose this morning.
Yeah. And I saw a meme today about how colleges, and it was a joke, had put emotional support geese on campus for finals, and this goose was attacking a person. Like, actually, you know, go ahead and hang on to that fear, in my opinion. Although my friend has a goose that insists on being snuggled every morning when he goes out to feed them. So
Oh.
I guess, you know, they just have a bad rap.
Well,
Mhm.
it's Canadian geese. Let me be perfectly honest. Canadian geese are evil, but I'm sure you
Yeah.
can have a pet goose that's lovely.
You know, the thing I would say about your story that I really love, and it's something that you proved true when you talked about sort of the genesis of where it came from, is that it's that unexpectedness that generates the fear in us, particularly when we're young. So you go to pick up a rock and it jumps in your face. You dump a mug in your lap, and sure, maybe you should be afraid of the coffee, but the mug delivered it to that child. And so now, as an adult, she's like, nope, still nothing to do with mugs. And I do think that a bunch of us, I mean, like, I have an irrational response. I'm much better, like, I can control my body. But inside, when a bee comes near, when I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, we stepped on a yellow jacket's nest and they were vicious and left. They don't lose their stingers, and they left like 70 stingers in my sister's head. I mean, awful. And so yeah, when the unexpected happens, and so when you love a twist in a story, it's related to this. It's related to that unexpected moment. And we like to be surprised, but we don't like to be terrified. And that's something that you're touching on with that story. I loved it. Okay, so we've had Kai, Crystal, and Betsy. Who would like to go next?
Go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Before the next person starts, I'm sorry, but I have to go. It was lovely talking to all of you.
Thanks for coming. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice seeing you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so we'll go Tammy. Whoa, you all moved. Tammy, and then Sarah, and then Kat, you're just stuck last because you didn't leap to the moment, but I hope you will still read.
That's fine.
Okay, Tammy.
Okay. I couldn't run fast enough up those open stairs. Whew, made it as I slammed the door. Thank God Dad wasn't home. He would have screamed at a slammed door. Oh no, my phone. I left it down there. Ever so slowly, I opened the door to stare at the rock wall and the bottom of the open stairs. Canaverous dirt to the right. Slowly, I stepped down into the cellar. The muss was the first to assault my nose. I stepped over the dirty laundry we all threw to the bottom of the stairs and over to the cement floor. Banging and hissing from the pipes, inches from my head, sounded. Life went on upstairs while it stood still here. I walked over to the washer and saw that wanted jewel, my phone, the object worth repeating this journey for.
Nice.
I like that it started with action. So like we're immediately thrown in to the fear response.
Curious what the actual fear was. If it were me, like I'd be running out from spiders.
Oh my God. Yes. And Kat, is it our class, your class where the guy just got 2 tarantulas, or is it in Tammy and Sarah's class? I think it's in 4301.
I don't think I've seen that yet.
Oh. He writes horror too, but anyway. More thoughts about Tammy's basement. Oh, cellar.
Right. I have a funny anecdote. So we lived in this house that had a basement that was very similar to the one that you were just describing. And so we used to joke like, oh, there are bodies buried in the basement. Like we would joke with my mom about this. And one time she was up super, super late and she dropped something down the stairs. And then she was like, oh God, I'm going to wake it up. we did that to her because we just messed with her all the time about the basement. But I can see that basement, like I know that basement, and that weird irrational fear when you're down there, like something's gonna come out of the drain. What do you think is gonna happen? But I get it. I get it. And I saw it every bit, even like the rough walls. I'm like, yeah, I know where we're at.
My daughter is actually afraid of our basement, so to hear that, that's something that she would do. And
I
she would
don't-
just run down
I
there
don't
real quick
blame
and
her.
grab it.
Yeah, I don't blame her. I mean, like root cellars, they're evil. I mean, oh yeah, and cat with spiders. Oh my goodness. That I mean, so you picked, I think, a really rational thing for people to be afraid of, Tammy. I loved that life happened upstairs, but it stood still downstairs. That's so perfect. Like you're gonna get trapped in this horror movie if you have to go back downstairs. And you also have to go, and like if your phone is down there, it's probably the only thing a child would go back for, right? And I love that because I think Tammy and I are pretty close to the same age. So I love that you're writing, like you understand how much that means to your character, even though both of us existed long before the age of cell phones and texting.
And I actually added that in for today because this is actually a snapshot of my basement in my childhood.
But right. Right. Oh, we had one that had like all the canned goods my mom made lined up on the shelves and they'd get little cobwebs in them. Oh, which proves the existence of spiders. So yeah, I mean, like at a basement, and especially anybody, I think, is it Betsy? Somebody here is writing horror, and I get scared every term. I have somebody in both classes this time. Don't worry, I can handle it mostly.
I
But then-
tried to write horror because I like to read it. And I was a teenager, an older teenager, and I was scared I couldn't sleep for weeks. And I had only wrote one chapter and I said, no, I can't do this.
Yeah,
And
it's like letting
I
loose
just
the demons.
can't do it.
Somebody else at least limits what happens in the horror if you're watching it from somebody else's story. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tammy. Let's hear what Sarah got.
So mine is short because I started writing one and hated it, so switched to something else. And I'm really not excited, but anyway. So her father had given her the crystallized feather when she was 4. It was encased in a glass domed shield. All of this time, she just kept it on the bedside table. When she turned 13, the feather started to glow a blue-hued color and sent out waves of shockingly cold air. Once she uncovered the feather and touched it lightly, her finger ached as she immediately felt the icy sensation. Goosebumps traveled up her arm. A knock on the door beckoned her to dinner. She noticed her sister sitting on the bench in the hall. After dinner, Susie came back to her room. The feather was gone. When her father found out she'd lost the feather, he shook with rage. So therefore, she knew she had fallen out of his good graces. Her heart sank as her tears filled with eyes. Tears filled her eyes, yeah.
Okay. And here's like the other side of the other story. Yeah.
I had my last class was story and concept. And so like I have this whole novel in my brain. And so I sleep with it, I wake with it. It's in me. So, and this is kind of the part of the premise.
Nice. Thoughts?
I like how I can mix it with your first story. So I know that something magical or mystical or something is going on with this feather, and it may not be very nice. Because there was a mention of blood in the first story, and there's a mention of like, what was it, crystallizing or something like that, touching when she touched the feather this time. So I'm wondering what evil that feather might possess.
And that opens up all kinds of questions like, why did dad give it to her? why when she was so young? Like, what if she had opened it before this? What would have happened?
I almost
So
feel
many
like it's
questions.
something that has been being passed down in the family for generations, and that maybe it's meant to like unlock some true power within her.
Right?
It is. Good one. Yep.
So much potential. So much potential. I love it.
Yeah, and do you hear how readers bring like the way we understand how stories work? We bring that to stories and we're like, we know the possibilities behind what's going to happen. And it's almost like choose your adventure, right? You know, you get to choose the adventure and take us along with it. But I agree with Betsy. I was like, what is this dad up to? I mean, this thing is awful. But of course, it didn't start to blow or anything until she was 13, which of course is the magical age of probably menstruation and turning into a woman. And then I was amazed that, you know, there was a twin in the last one, and I'm assuming it's the same feather, and they don't live in the same room, which was weird to me. Even like as young children, you know, my sister had twins, and so, or has twins there. And actually they room together as like 25, 26-year-olds. They share an apartment. But so it was weird to me that they weren't in the same space. And I wanted to know more about that, especially falling out of favor with a father means the other twin is probably in favor. I don't know, or has always been out of favor and she'll join. Like, you know how you hear how like readers are always going, I have an idea what might come next, and you keep reading to find out if that's what happens. It's fun. And I hope you're writing on something like this because I'm really eager to hear where it goes. All right, we're down to Kat as our last reader, and I think if we do this right, we can give her really good feedback and end up being finished on time.
All right. This is about as vague as the first prompt, but I think it leaves a lot to be thought about. If only I had known Scott wasn't human, then maybe I wouldn't have been in this situation right now. He seemed like a charming, normal kind of guy when he first came to the school as a new student. He was placed on the desk next to me, and I couldn't help but feel as if there was an allure pulling me towards him. It wasn't anything like the fact that he smelled great or looked like he should be on the cover of some teen magazine. No, it was something deeper, something that drove my curiosity wild. It wasn't until the weekend that I spoke to him for the first time. It was a bonfire party out in the woods, and he was invited out. I kept noticing him watching me from across the fire, the light of the flames dancing across his face. He knew I was watching him too. He nodded his head to follow him, and I did. Looking back on it, I shouldn't have. He was deceivingly dangerous, and I suppose now I am too. How on earth am I going to hide this from my family, my friends? What if I hurt someone when I lose control? If only I knew he wasn't human, then maybe I wouldn't have or would have kept my distance. Maybe I would still be human.
Oh,
I love the sinister immediately, like right out of the bat.
yeah, it's like kind of giving away what's going to happen, but the journey to getting to what does happen is worth it. You know, like we're like, oh no, how does this happen? Right? Yeah. Sorry, who else?
So like the relatability of like, how am I going to keep this from my family? Like, this is obviously someone, they said they're in school, so they're not someone who, you know, probably lives alone. So, you know, how do you keep this from your family? And what exactly are you keeping from your family? We know that this person isn't human, but what are they? What are you? Like, let's there's so many options.
Right.
My mind went right to the Twilight series. And it was like,
Mine
oh
too.
wow, is this going to be another vampire book? And I love vampire books. So it's like,
Well,
oh,
I'm like, I'm thinking werewolf or vampire, but who knows? We might
yeah,
have something different on our hands. Who knows what we're dealing with?
Right.
My
Like,
problem is I couldn't
Right.
decide which one to do, so I just made it mysterious.
yeah, for now that's perfect. Like you don't have
Right.
to let us know. And it actually keeps us reading because we have an idea in mind. And what if you could come up with something that wasn't either vampire or werewolf, but also equally sort of crazy and tough, and you know, come up with a new creature or something. Maybe they turn into a centaur in between. I don't know.
My God, that would be amazing.
Right? Except for centaurs probably wouldn't be as harmful. So they could be, man, they can be really mean, at least, you know, if we go by Harry Potter, right? I loved that moment in the school when it wasn't appearances, it wasn't a great smell, which I loved because like smell is a really huge sense for me, but it was just something else that was deeper. And that is just a hint of sort of the, I don't want to use the word spiritual because that's a little dangerous to use in this context, but you know, something at that sort of mystical level. I think the character is connecting at that mystical level with this mystical being. And it tells us that maybe we don't even have control about whether or not she goes in the woods with him. And also, from having done this class for a while, do not let people go to bonfires in the woods. Just don't. Because this stuff happens. I've had characters killed by ghosts at bonfires. I've had people killed at bonfires to turn them into ghosts. I've had the bonfires. They're bad news. Really bad.
Deadly bonfires.
Do I like them so much?
Yeah, I like them
Never know
too.
what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you don't ever know what's gonna happen.
Probably write up a bonfire anthology of just all kinds of different bonfire stories that happen.
That'd be
That is
awesome.
such a great idea. You could put a call for stories out for a bonfire anthology and get everybody to submit to it, and then you would get this huge variety.
I want something that comes out of the bonfire itself.
Oh,
Be good too.
yeah. Actually, I think the one with the devil in it did have that happen. The story that I read. I mean, I've had at least 10 bonfire stories, but every one of them's different. And that's what I love is that like I can give you all the same prompt and you come up with all these wildly different stories and they're all good. Deepened senses, bonfire. Oh, and the deceivingly dangerous. That was really nice alliteration there. Like it had a rhythm to it that made us feel something about Scott. And I keep characterizing, I gender your character and don't let me do that. They, because I don't know. I don't remember you giving us the gender.
I
so
didn't yet.
Yeah. I'm 53. I'm trying. I really am because I completely believe in gender neutrality. It's just my voice or my head keeps throwing things out there it's not supposed to do. So I'm working on it. They seem to really not like Scott after they get changed to not being human too. And I really like that aspect because although I didn't read all of them, nor did I watch all the movies, I do believe that if I'm right, Bella tried to become a vampire. And I don't know if she ever does or whatever, but you know, she loves.
He does.
Does she?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm still not going to read it. It's just not very good writing.
Not good writing. I read them all because I'm a completionist.
Yeah.
It's just
And I usually am, but I tell you, I got partway through book 2 and I said, you know, I actually don't have to complete this. I'm sure I'll know what happens. See, and now I know.
Book 2 was the hardest.
Oh, was it? Okay, so well, there you go. I'm a quitter. But Kat, your character, I think that's a twist from sort of the anticipation, like a lot of, this is the same thing as saying we have the same assumptions about white, but whatever. People think that it's kind of cool to become a vampire and live forever or a werewolf or whatever. And you're teasing around that saying, maybe not, you know, maybe this decision, because it sounds like it happened against this character's will. And that's a really important thing to think about. And I mean, I think we all, like agency is such an important thing in our personal lives and in our characters' lives that addressing agency in a story like this, especially subtly, where you're not saying she was out or they were out of control, you know, or they didn't get to make the decision, that's really good. You know, you're talking about a really big, important idea, but you're not like saying, hey, look at this big, important idea I'm talking about. I feel in my heart like this is a great first session. I promise to try to control it, to try to keep it an hour and a half, because that's already 2 hours is a long time. So sorry about that. But we also had a lot of people. We had some great experiences. We spent a long time getting to know each other. Next time, I basically jump in, talk about, I think it'll be module 4 when we meet next time. Yes. So, you know, it'll be faster, I promise. Any last thoughts before we go?
Just a question. Are these planned like every other week at the same time?
I try to do them
Okay.
every other week at the same time. Every week is just too much for me. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It'd be too much for me too.
But every other week, and usually I plan them to land right before you have a creative week the next week. So module 4 is when you write your first draft of your story. And often you've got something going on in your head with the story, and then you can use the prompt to kind of get into just a little paragraph or so of your story. But you don't have to, it just seems to be useful for people. And a lot of times what you write in here does show up in people's stories in a really great way. Thank you so much for coming. I had a great time. We'll have to do it again in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
It
Cool.
was really great
Yep.
to meet all of you. Yeah, so, and Kat she sent it on email and twice on email. So there is a Discord server where you all can meet up outside of me, which is a good thing, if you want to talk about writing in the community. All right, take care. I'll see you in the
Bye.
interwebs and hopefully in 2 weeks. Bye.
Totally. Bye.